welcome to Gold Standard Service Training Incorporated. My name is Elena Valino Solis. I am the founder, CEO, and director of training for the company. A lot of people ask me over my career how I have ended up being an advisor in the first place. It's a very long, sordid story, but when I was 18, I was in university. I was learning to become a marine biologist, and I needed to put myself through school. So I had to find a job, of course, just like everybody else. And there was a gas station right close to the college where I was going, so it seemed to make sense to get a job there. So I started pumping gas, not knowing anything about cars. I just started listening to my boss explain what I needed to check when I popped the hood, and he started giving me instruction on how to check air filters, fluids, oil. Then later he started teaching me about tire wear, what I should be looking at in terms of strange tire wear, and when I saw certain things, I was to bring the customer into the service lane to have him have a discussion with them to let them know there was an issue that they had to deal with. And slowly over time, I got more and more familiar with the vehicles. Slowly though, I started selling a whole bunch of stuff when I saw things wrong, because I was actually taking time to look around when I popped the hood. He started paying me $1 per thing that I sold. So most nights when I was done my shift, we would work, 4 or 5 hours after work or after school, and I'd usually end up with $60 or $100 worth of commissions. So I was really enjoying the money, of course, and he was seeing some skill in terms of me being able to sell things. So slowly, when I started to see things like black brake fluid, I would bring him out so he could talk to the customer and explain why they should get it changed. And then eventually I was just taking his verbiage and saying it to the customer myself, and then sending them into the shop to get the services done. Slowly he started to realize that the business I was generating at the pump was going to be too much for him to deal with by himself, so he offered to put me on the counter, and I have never looked back from that day. I started learning side by side with him for several months until I was ready to take things on by myself. Obviously in 1990 or so, it was very difficult as a woman being in the automotive industry, because all the people that were coming in were kind of shocked that there was a lady at the counter that they had to talk to suddenly. But I kind of held my own, and I avoided a lot of discussions that were unpleasant in some ways when it came to gender issues. Sometimes guys would come in and say, oh, is there a guy I can talk to? And I get really offended and take it very personally, of course. But over time, I learned to, kind of put that behind me and just take it as it is. And then slowly, as time passed, the technicians were, getting lots of jobs sold for them, because I really had no fear when it came to talking to the customer. Mostly because my boss had no fear. He just picked up the phone and started talking to the customer, just like a matter of fact sort of thing. And he would explain exactly what they needed and why. And then when they did or didn't want to do things, he'd hang up the phone and move on to the next thing that he had to do. There was no emotional connection to it at all. But for me, being a woman, it was a bit different. I really felt like I had to keep the customer happy, and I was really nervous about, what I was saying, and I didn't really understand. I remember one time, one of the technicians told me that the vehicle he was on needed a carburetor because it had sediment in it. So I picked up the phone and I called the customer and I said, hey, you need a carburetor. It's got sediment in it. And he got really mad and he said, what do you mean there's sediment in my carburetor? You guys are the only one under there. And I was like, I had no idea how to react. So I said, just give me a moment. I'm just going to check with my boss and call you back. Maybe I should just talk to my boss or your boss. And I said, yeah, that might be a good idea. So I hung up the phone and I felt so stupid, and I just like an idiot. Went to the back. I'm like, oh my God, how did he get sediment in his carburetor? Like, did we put it there? Like, what happened? He goes, no. It just happens over time. The fuel lines get dirty because the gas is bad, or they get it out of a bad tank or whatever thing. The point of that story was that I really started to prepare myself before I got on the phone. So if someone told me that it needed, the car needed a tie rod or a ball joint or whatever thing, I had no idea what the things were because I was not a mechanic. So I would go back to the shop and I would say, okay, it needs a ball joint. What's a ball joint? Can you show me that? And they would point out what the ball joint was, what it did, what happened if it didn't get fixed. Some things were obviously more dangerous than others if they left them, what the brakes looked like, what the fluids were like, just everything. It was really, really hands-on. So the biggest thing over that beginning of my career was I had really good mentors and amazing teachers. My boss was, I can't even say, he was so patient. And I think mostly because he had his own daughters. So he was really good at dealing with women and their emotions to start with. But when I would have a little, emotional bout that, women have sometimes, and he would just step back and say, calm down. It's okay. It's going to be fine. We're just fixing cars. It's not a big deal. And, I was like, yeah, but he's going to feel this and he's going to be mad. He's going to think this and this and this about me. And he's like, it doesn't matter. Just pick up the phone and phone him and tell him he needs brakes. That's it. And he really taught me to detach myself emotionally from all the things that were going on. And he also taught me how to deal with a lot of conflict resolution. He was a star when it came to, ever since you did my oil change, my brakes are noisy, like just things that don't make any sense that people don't understand. So he really taught me how to be, dealing with those things with some finesse. He was an amazing mentor, and I appreciate him to this day. So you know who you are. Shout out. Thank you. The next person that really taught me a lot was at my very first dealership. So when I ended up at my first dealership, after working at that little garage for so long, I was in shock. It was a super wild ride. I mean, I went from a place that had, 4 bays, 4 mechanics, and just me. I did all my own parts sourcing, all my own estimates, everything. If I needed things that were wrong, I would phone, I would get them fixed and re-delivered. And it was all in my own control. So I had it was a liberating experience to be able to be in control of everything. When I went to a dealership, every department has its own group of people doing things. So it's not so easy to have everything done in the fashion that you want it. So I really had to learn to work around people's attitudes, the way they work, their efficiencies or inefficiencies, depending who it was. And I really felt out of control over so many things. Because I would send an estimate to parts and say, okay, can you please order me these pieces? And then I would sell the job and promise it for a certain amount of time. And then the parts didn't get ordered for whatever reason, or they showed up wrong, which happens all the time. And I felt out of control, and it was really hard for my OCD with my job to do that, to let it go. Moving forward, I was in that drive-through for 10 years, learning, of course, as I went. And my manager at that time, him and I worked together the entire time. Most of the years we were together was amazing. We had sort of a mom and dad relationship at the end with the techs and the people that worked there. I was the service mom and he was the service dad. But we really, ran the department smoothly, and we really had an efficient dispatching system. But at my desk, it was like air traffic control central, because I was doing dispatching, I was doing my normal job. I was also trying to train people, which was very difficult when you're doing your own full-time job. But eventually I had to move on to different things, and that's when I started to get into management, etc. But in the end, over the years, I've been in the industry since 1989, and I've really just discovered that I really love to train people on how to do this job efficiently, because there is so much work that we can be doing in the time that we think is downtime. There's so many things that we can be doing to make ourselves more efficient, to do a better job speaking to people, skills that we can be learning. So the company that we've founded, my husband and I, basically we just want to train service advisors and service managers how to give a different level of service to people, build relationships with the customers so that they don't want to go anywhere else. Because after all, when you come into a dealership as a person that's servicing their car there, you're not going there because it's dealership XZY. It is the person that takes care of you that makes it special and personal. And that's really what we want to focus on, is the personal experience of the customer and making it right for them.